The counseling session you are about to watch is an informal assessment completed from the lens of Donald Super and his corresponding ideas. The client in this session is portraying the main character from the movie The Intern. The movie's main character, Ben, is 70 years old, a widow of 3 years, and recently retired. He was a very successful businessman for 40 years, and he's having a hard time adapting to retired life. For the purpose of this video, Ben's character is represented by a female named Lulu. Lulu came to counseling because she feels like her life is missing something, and although she may be happy, she knows there is a hole in her heart that needs to be filled. Lulu is contemplating the idea of returning to work to see if she can fill the void she believes is missing. After listening to Lulu's history, the counselor begins the session by cycling Lulu back to the exploration stage of the lifespan model, allowing her to start the process of rediscovering who she is at 70. As you watch the video, you will see the counselor placing a lot of emphasis on the idea of self-concept and what that looks like for Lulu. You might also notice the counselor taking Lulu through the archway of career determinants, assessing her biological and geographical components, interests, values, and social networks. By doing this, the counselor is bringing awareness of these various areas to Lulu to help her figure out what is important to her and what she may be looking for in a job. Towards the end of the video, the counselor reflects with Lulu on the idea of roles in theaters, briefly touching on and piecing together all of the roles the client has played up to this point.
Lulu, it's so good to see you back.
Hi, it's great to be back.
So I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to be taking a little bit of notes just so I can track you as we are having our conversation today, okay?
Okay.
So tell me a little bit about what's bringing you in.
So what's brought me in recently is that I find that I'm having it hard to find meaning in life.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, Freud once said, love and work, work and love, that's all you need. Well, my husband passed away 3.5 years ago. I'm retired, so essentially I have nothing.
Okay. I'm really sorry to hear about your husband.
Thank you.
Yeah, so sounds like that's kind of been a big transition for you in the last couple of years of finding yourself in retirement and now being a widow. So tell me kind of how you've been spending that time.
Well, first, I tried traveling the globe, so I used like all my mileage points. And every time I came home, me being alone spoke so loud when I always entered an empty house. After that, I've tried golfing, I've tried cooking, I've tried karate, I've tried kayaking, I've tried, nature walks, I've tried, practicing Mandarin. So yeah, it's just some of the things I've been working on.
Sounds like you've been trying to fill your time with different activities and finding things to kind of fill that hole that you were talking about earlier.
Yep, trying to fill the void.
Okay. It sounds like you're maybe considering going back in the workforce.
Yeah, actually, just recently I stumbled upon a flyer as I was walking outside of Starbucks for an internship position that is looking to hire a senior citizen.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm a 70-year-old woman who's looking to do something more meaningful in my life.
It sounds like you got really excited when you saw this senior citizen internship opportunity.
For sure.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about the excitement that you were feeling at that moment.
I felt like, I was meant to walk on that block. I was meant to find that flyer. I was meant to, find a purpose again.
It really spoke to you.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so if that's something that you really want to pursue, let's talk about that a little bit, because you have found yourself in this retirement phase for, you said, 3 years, and so it's sounding like you're looking for a little bit more. And I think maybe a good way to start is kind of exploring career paths again, kind of taking you back to when you were 20 and finding what excites you, what are your interests, what are your values, what are your needs, all of those components that go into finding a new career, even at 70. So maybe we can kind of rewind a little bit and cycle back into this exploration phase and rediscover who is Lulu at 70 and what are your interests now. So I'm going to ask you that question. What is of interest to you at 70 years old right now?
I mean, interests as far as career or as far as outside, like my everyday life?
Let's do both. You can start with whichever one you would like.
All right. Well, for everyday life, I really like practicing meditation and, some flow movement. I like having a sense of community. As far as career-wise, I like my interest. I'm not really sure about my interest just because
Okay.
I've been out of the field for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And jobs that are offered today are not the same as, a telephone book company.
Okay. So you mentioned a telephone book company. Was that your previous job?
Yes. So I was VP of a telephone
Okay.
company. I did that for about 15 or so years.
Mhm.
And then before that, I was still an employee at the phone book company. So I have a lot of experience regarding sales, advertisement, managing people. So I have
Okay.
a lot of leadership experience.
Well, and that's a good place to start because it sounds like there's some interest there of liking a little bit more of sales, working with people, maybe a little bit more hands-on. So looking at your role in the phone book company, what were some things about that job specifically that you found enjoyment in? And this can kind of help us with our interest component.
Well, just like you said, it was very hands-on.
Okay.
I made sure that, the copier was being ran right. So like if anything was malfunctioning, I was on the phone with another
Okay.
company trying to get that solved. I always made sure everyone stuck to their timelines. So that way we were able to make our deadlines.
Right.
I was also able to kind of incorporate employee activities. So there was work support with
Right.
each other. So a lot of like team building exercises. So I like to be very active, very hands-on.
Okay, and it sounds also too kind of that fast pace, managing a team, the organizational skills, those are some things that you found enjoyable in that past career. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your values as a person, because it's really important to have kind of that fit of who you are, your self-concept, so to speak, and your personality, because if one isn't matching the other, you're not going to find satisfaction there. So in terms of your values and what's important to you, can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. So one of my biggest values in life is family.
Okay.
So I have a son,
Mhm.
I have 2 grandchildren, and I love them to death. I do try to see them regularly when I can, and then,
Right.
vice versa, they try to visit me as well. And I also value integrity, I
Okay.
value loyalty, I value timeliness, and I also value dressing to impress.
Okay. So it sounds like sense of community and belonging are really important to you.
Hugely family. Family is
Family.
hugely.
Okay. And to maybe find a work environment where you have that sense of a family, so to speak, in that work environment, and that sense of belonging. So that would be important for you. Okay. So another component of kind of going back to exploring career interests again is looking at your social network and what that would look like in this new phase of life you find yourself in. So tell me a little bit about your friends and your peers.
I do have a group of friends,
Mhm.
and we do meet regularly for social gatherings, at least weekly. And it's getting a little bit harder to do so because we are getting older.
Right.
And it seems that I'm at a funeral almost every week.
And so maybe the idea too of going back to work is encouraging, knowing that you're going to start reintroducing a lot more people in your life to reform some relationships because you're losing some on the back end.
Maybe.
Okay. So a big component of going back into the labor market is looking at kind of those geographical components. So we're in New York City, the job market's great, there's a lot of opportunities, So it's encouraging that you're going to already start at a great platform going into this potential new role. Is there any concerns that you have looking at it from that lens?
Yeah, maybe that I won't be able to keep up. It might be too fast paced for me,
Okay.
or I might be a little too slow at it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of concerns.
So kind of touching on that biological side right now of being a woman, being older, more mature, and now going into a more high-tech, fast-paced work environment, that can be really scary.
Very intimidating.
So being a woman and on the more mature end, now going back into this company, there's going to be a lot of differences because you mentioned previous you worked for a telephone book company for what you said 30 years. So what are your thoughts about that now working? I mean, that's not even a thing anymore, a telephone book company. So how do you expect that to go for you now going into a completely new realm?
Going into a completely new realm at my age and the state of living that I'm currently in, I'm a little worried, yet at the same time, I'm hoping that I'll be able to implement some of my values that I've grown up with and sprinkle it onto the company that I could potentially be getting an internship at. There's a lot of positives and negatives to it, although at the same time I am trying to be more aware of the positives, like bringing in my values.
And you mentioned previous that you are very good at time management and organizing and kind of that wisdom that you can bring in from being VP of a phone book company. So bringing in those management skills and maybe adding a different component to this new senior citizen internship opportunity that presented itself.
Yeah.
Is there any concern of, you are 70, so there's a good chance you could maybe be working for, your boss could be 25, let's say, or 45, younger than you. What are your thoughts about working for someone younger?
It's not really something that I've given too much thought about. I think I would have to, see it and experience it firsthand before really judging the experience.
Okay.
I think depending on the person, age doesn't really matter because if they're a hard worker, then that's something that I'm going to look up to, no matter how old they are.
Okay. So age isn't a concern for you. Is there any concern of being a female and going back in the workplace working for a male?
Maybe, because I am, so old, and I am very limited in what it is that I can do right now. And again, there's concerns regarding whether or not I would be able to keep up with the industry.
So more of maybe that physical stamina, that's more of a concern, not so much working for a man, but just your physical capabilities.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just kind of wanted to touch on different components. It helps me get a better idea of your self-concept and what's important to you, and to make sure that we've talked about things that could be potential barriers in this newfound career or role that you might find yourself in. So another thing that I really like talking to my clients on is, in your life, and for you, you are on this, your more mature end, and so you've been through different roles in your life, and you've started out as a student. So I want to kind of speak to you, if you can kind of go back in time to when you were in your 20s. Tell me a little bit about what that role was when you were a student.
Well, I was a student at Northwestern University, and I got a degree in business administration, and I essentially got my job at the phone book company as soon as I got out of college.
So you went to a great school. It sounds like academics was important to you, and you were ambitious to jump right into a career. And then you spoke a little bit about your late husband who passed, so I'm assuming, there was a marriage in there at some point, so being a spouse was another role that you entered. So tell me about that role for you.
Well, we were together for 45 years, so it was more of, I'm not really sure. It was just a marriage. It was a good, healthy, stable marriage. We supported each other. We cried together. We laughed together. So.
And then during that time, you said you had kids, so you had the homemaker role of starting a family together, and finding yourself as a grandma of some grandchildren. So that was another role that you went into, and now finding yourself in retirement, we like to call it leisure light. So being able to enjoy leisure activities again. And then it's sounding like you're at this place in your life that you want to go back to being a worker. Kind of in that time that you found yourself at the phone book company. Is there any concerns of kind of cycling back to that time of your life?
It's scary, regardless. Starting something new is scary. Starting something over is scary. Jumping back into something is scary. I mean, the whole thing is just scary.
Oh, it's terrifying, especially being out of the field for so long. So we touched on a lot of things today. We kind of explored kind of your sense of self. So what are those values, those needs, those interests of yours that all funnel up to that overarching sense of who is Lulu and what's meaningful to you? And so I kind of wanted to just summarize a little bit. I know when I met with you a couple months back, one of the biggest things that you were looking for was finding your sense of self now without your husband. And it's looking like a big component of that is through the world of work. And I think today we made really good progress of being able to kind of strengthen that self-identity and that self-concept by using your career as a tool to strengthen your self-concept.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for in terms of, goals for the rest of my life, like learning how to live without my husband because I have no choice. And yet at the same time, trying to find purpose in the work that I'm set out to do.
So, you know what, next week, let's kind of start exploring maybe some of those fears and worries of putting yourself back into the job market, labor force.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Okay. All right, Lulu, I'll see you next week.
Bye.